Clark.
And I'm Angi Kinser.
So happy to have you along. And you may be wondering what in the world you're doing watching a financial education program on your Tuesday evening or whenever you happen to be watching this video. Well, it just so happens that after teaching at Purdue University for 7 years and doing a radio show for 20 years, we combined the two, the financial education and the radio show, to bring you ideas and thoughts about things that may be providing financial regrets in your future, if you will. Events that occur, whether it's the loss of a job, the marriage of a child, what to do with things that are going on in your financial life. We provide checklists and education that you can use as an actionable plan to be able to take out. Now, we're going to ask you to call Angi at some point in time at 800-928-4001. Get signed up for your Next Steps meeting. Angi, it's pretty simple, isn't it?
It is. Give me a call.
And Angi will walk you through the things that you need to be able to bring to be able to come in to see our team. In the meantime, we're going to get ready to have a great show tonight. So glad to have you along. If you've got a question or comment, you can email us at considerthis@yourlifeafterwork.com. Go to our website at yourlifeafterwork.com. Or, of course, give Angi a call at 800-928-4001. Now, on to the show. Well, welcome to Consider This program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Angi Kinser.
So happy to have you along. Hey, we are working on Timing is Everything. And I will tell you that it's a great topic title. I'm not sure I agree that it's everything, but it is certainly a lot to most things.
Well, you know me. I've got a good trivia question.
I'm ready.
About timing. Do you know what famous landmark that you can be fined for snapping a photo at the wrong time of day?
Wow.
Yeah, it's a famous landmark.
No.
In Paris.
The Eiffel Tower?
Yes. It says, technically, you're not allowed to photograph the Eiffel Tower in Paris at night. The structure itself is public domain, but the light show that illuminates once the sun sets is copyrighted as artistic work protected by French law.
Now, you know that I love travel, so I have actually been to the Eiffel Tower probably 3 times.
Now, it says...
And I have taken pictures at night.
It says if you do it for, probably not going to get caught, but if you try to sell those pictures, you would have had to have gotten written permission and gone through a whole process to take a picture at night.
The light show is beautiful. And for all of those of you out there who love to travel, once we get over this craziness, Paris is really an interesting city to go to. The Romans built it. It's in circles, right? So I got to go back in the days when we had the cooking show, and I used to go to all the cooking things. I got to go cook at the Cordon Bleu in Paris, and the cab driver didn't even know where it was.
Really?
And in America, you would think, good Lord, of course everybody knows where the Cordon Bleu is. And no, it's we actually had to drive around, and it's in a residential neighborhood, and it was very, very odd from what you'd think about it. But timing is everything. So what are we going to talk about tonight?
We're going to talk about all kinds of things. We're going to talk about Social Security. We're going to talk about some gifting strategies.
Question that came in that we will get to in the Social Security off of our website. If you've got a question that you would like to hear on the radio show, as you're watching us stream live possibly, you can go ahead and put that on Facebook or on our website. They will get it to us. I think Darren is taking your calls and we'll get the questions through to us. What's the other way for them to reach us for a question?
Through the website. You can actually go to Talk to FEG. We have a little
leave a question. Happy to have you along.
Yes.
Folks, we are so honored that you're here with us, spending the time. Please, if you have questions, don't hesitate to send them in. We are going to do our best to have a great show. We'll talk a little bit about the Next Steps program at some point in time, but our job really here is to give you things to consider. We'll take a break and be right back. So welcome to you that are watching us on the streaming side. You know you get the added benefit of being able to ask questions. Other people get their questions answered later. We are more than happy to take yours. Timing is everything, and there are many, many parts and avenues that you have to consider. We have a planning team that you may or may not know, and I may talk about this in the show because I'm just so proud of them yesterday. And it's very, very interesting to watch how our planning team functions and just the vulnerability that they express, and just the ideas that can come from so many different minds. So you know what? We actually will talk about that. But what's our first topic?
We're going to talk about timing social, the most critical decision you make in your retirement.
Absolutely. All right, Levi. Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This Program. I am your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Angie Kinser.
We are happy to have you along. We're talking about timing is everything as our main theme. And Angie's got this one earmarked as Social Security timing. Here's what I want to tell you. And I just want to share with you, just like a proud papa. I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to be in the right place to be the co-founder of the Financial Enhancement Group back in 1996. Well, especially our associate advisors will say, hey, I saw this week and I wanted more clarification. And to live in a world of vulnerability where people are willing to express with Social Security timing, I think, is so many of us know so much that you have a propensity to believe when you know more that other people know more. And I had coming in, didn't know what the kid security that you need to that had retirement age for almost all of us now that it and she is, why in the world would I wait to 70 if I could take it at 62? And I will tell you this with Social Security. If you agree to die on time, right? If you agree to die at 84 and a half, if you agree to die on time, it really doesn't matter when you take Social Security, provided you have no other assets anywhere else, your life expectancy is in good, normal order, and you think the tax rate is going to remain consistent for the rest of your life. Now, if you believe all of that, well, we don't believe all that. The tax code is anything but flat. It continues to oscillate and maneuver all of the time and will continue to do so. The rules of Social Security may change. They're not going to change for most of you that are already in your early 60s in terms of how it's going to work. Cost of living, especially if you have more assets, may be in jeopardy at some point in time, but that really doesn't have a major impact on the decision-making process of when you take it. For every year you take Social Security prior to your full retirement age, so if you took it at 62 and your full retirement age is 67, you're going to lose 6% of your benefit per year for the rest of your life. That also has some impact, by the way, on your surviving spouse based on when they took it. So pay attention to this. If you take it at 67, you're going to get your full retirement age allotment. And that's what most people see on their statement that they get from socialsecurity.gov. Every year you delay it up to age 70, you actually gain 8% per year from that age 67 to age 70. So for an average family, married for an extended period of time with reasonable income, so not having lower incomes, but not necessarily having higher incomes, this can be a $400,000 to $500,000 decision when people make it when they take Social Security. The key thing that I want you to take away, and then we can get into the questions, is you cannot look at Social Security as a silo conversation. It is not a separate individual conversation without being able to bring in all of the other components that we have inside of our asset base, our tax situation, and other things that are out there. So with that, Ange, go ahead.
Well, I mean, you said most people full retirement age is 67. How do Okay, I wondered. And then
It's not like a
spouses claim benefits, I mean, based on their partner. How does that work?
if you've been married for longer than 10 years and divorced. So we actually have a family in Lafayette, well, a person in Lafayette who is divorced, not one, not two, but three individuals, all doctors, married one for 10 years and a month, one for 10. On the divorced spouse. They don't even know that they did it. You just have to have the divorce decree to say, here I am, this is what I have done. A hilarious story. But yes, you can claim on your spouse's benefit. It's a reduced benefit, but you can claim on theirs. That we assist in making that decision. It's a big part of what it is that we do. But to any time you say perfect timing, the answer is no, because exactly what the rules are going to be, exactly what return on investments are going to be. I can give you a better answer, but you can't do that. So
Well,
what
in
we have
that
to use is the preponderance of the evidence put in front of us. Get early. That came to and you want to know how it works, we are happy to help. We cannot if we choose to partner together. Now, when we say things to consider, about what? Well, it's about the 5 critical elements. That's your life after work, and a big part of that is when can you retire? How much money can you take? When do you take social work? Your end, donor advised funds that need to be taking place, whether or not you should put money in college choice, knowing that in the families that we take care of. But this is that go into it, but really the allocation life. How do I take what I have, protect myself and my wife? Tax light. So that's a next steps meeting. You can call Angi at 800-928-4001. It is spent a big part of my career.
How do I know if I have enough money to retire?
Ah. All right, Levi. No.
And so, what line to successful retirement? So the variables.
Know all of the answers, but they know that I will. The transference of confidence is as long as they possibly can, and much to my how much money do you need to retire in Google, we would like to believe that we would get the same results, and we don't, right? The ads on the side are different. and there's that transference of confidence. Anything that you want to believe to be true should not be just to make you feel those areas. So when you talk about the variables, and consumer, right? They're bought by Fidelity's, they're bought by Schwab's, they're bought by really want to manage the money. But by definition, they're information and research. And that's just the facts that we have to deal with. So and so what that means is as you're looking at money, Angie, the old expand your lifetime simply but I mean, all things considered, the long formula that we use for that. The second are assumptions. So think bad news bears for those of you that are Angie and I's age. Remember the coach, right? But they're still required if you're going to look at any of these formulas. So you have to have an assumption of what your rate of return is going to be before you retire. And then you have to have an accumulation phase, the preservation phase, and the distribution phase. 3 different objectives and 3 different assumptions that ought to be going into that modeling and that mix, right? So you've got that, what you're going to earn on your assets while you're accumulating, earn on your assets while you're preserving them, and then earn on your assets while you're distributing them. You have to have an assumption of an inflation rate, and I think that does vary based on the life that most of us lead. The more you need services, the more inflation I think you're going to experience. The more you need goods, I think the lower the inflation you're going to experience going forward. Just some of my observations. So those are some of the tax rate. I'm going to hit the tax rate is the other one. You really have to assume what your tax rate is going to be. We can model it, we can suggest it, but we have to understand that there.
One of the things you talk about a lot is standard of living. So how does that apply?
So again, you go online, and when you look at my life, you have to understand I'm a certified financial planner, so I was trained to speak a certain lingo. I'm an academic. I was 7 years as an adjunct professor at Purdue University, where I taught this stuff, right? And then I've done this for 32 years, and I'm a wee bit hard-headed. I don't just accept the raw data without looking at the fact that you're in a situation in a unique life, right? So when we look at this, people talk about academically percentages of the income that you made that you need to retire. And it's a generality. It's not about you, Angie. It's not about me, Joe. It's very broad based, and it tends to deal with people with lower incomes. The median income of the United States, as opposed to dealing with people that are listening to the show that come in to visit us that have a higher asset basis. They may have had lower incomes, but they've been good savers, good accumulators of assets. When we look at that and we help them break that down, when you go to retire as a unique individual, it really isn't about replacing the income that you made. It's about replacing the standard of living that you had. You don't need 70% of your income. You need 100% of your standard of living. Then you also need to understand that standard of living, if you will, is broken into 2 categories. right? It's broken into your fixed expenses that you are going to have the rest of your life, that we do need to inflate over a period of time. Inflation is real. Don't let anybody kid you. It exists. But there's also that social component. And the older we get, the less desire we have to go see the Eiffel Tower.
Okay, here's the question that came in through Talk to FEG. My wife and I both plan to retire January 31st of 2025. She'll be 65 in 4 months. I'll be 65 in 2 months. That means we'll be retiring 18 and 20 months respectively before our full retirement age.
So he's talking about Social Security in that when the full retirement age.
Like a lot of retirees, one of our biggest concerns is drawing down our accounts in the most effective tax strategy possible. How can you help in this area?
So that's where we look at the whole, so Social Security is what I would call a silo. We understand that in central Indiana, and I know you're listening all over the country, but when we look at this in Indiana, we know you don't put the beans with the corn. We keep them separate in silos and in big containers that you see in the movies. They're real. They're all over around us. These are real things.
Yes.
People tend to make decisions in silos. And again, when I talk about that transference of confidence, what you want to hear is what you want to believe to be true. So it's odd to me that people will say, well, I'm going to take Social Security early because I may die, right? And I want to get all of the benefit. And then they will wait to take money out of their IRA until they're 70 and a half because they don't want to touch any of the money. Really, it's the fear of running out of income, if you will, of the taxation. So what we do is help you look at the entire operation, all of your assets that you have, where your current tax rate is, where your future tax rate will be, and then we deal with the inevitable consequence that we all exit. And that means at some point in time, one of your spouses is going to pass away and your marginal tax rate gets expanded. Can go up just because you lost a loved one. So we walk through that entire analysis with you to make sure that you're able to see it and understand it.
Okay, we got another question. I'm taking my retirement at 62. My husband, who had higher wages, is delaying his start date. Is this the correct thing to do?
If you were born before January 1st of 1954, on or before January 1st of 1954, you can argue that you can do a file and suspension. That's really passed for almost everybody now because most people are already there. It's kind of a dead strategy, and every now and then we have somebody who calls, and even the window to do that, like we used to be able to do that, has passed. You can talk about doing that, but what you'll hear people say is if your husband delays, what the common statement is, when your husband passes away, you're of the two benefits. What people fail to tell you is that you have to formulate when you took yours early. So there's still a reduction that's in that. It's not a dollar for dollar transfer. It depends on your asset base in terms of where you are. When you look at the amount of tax deferred assets you have, the amount of income that you need, delaying it may make sense. And if you're both retired and he's simply delaying it, it may make sense, especially if you have a life expectancy problem, or life expectancy issue, I should say, or threat. But it's really, really hard with any amount of data that you can give us without looking at that whole operation to say, yeah, that's a good call or not. Keep in mind with Social Security, if you just started it this year, you have 12 months to say, I changed my mind and be able to put the money back. And every now and then, we look at somebody and make that recommendation and, we put it back in and it's like Social Security said, nope, never happened. Nothing to see here. Good question, and thank you.
Should you ever postpone retiring concerning the market, like if you're in a bear market?
What you need to do is to be able to have operational income to be able to maintain that standard of living if you're going to retire early. I would not tell you to delay retirement just because you're in a bear market if you have access to other funds, which could be reverse mortgages, could be lines of credit that you have on a house, other assets that you can use. We had a lot of people who, not that we took care of, but that we visited with in 2008 and 2009 who delayed their retirement. When it was all over and said and done, they really didn't need to. And that's what we tried to explain then. You should not allow market volatility to really get in the way. Now, the distribution part of that is different. Remember, in distribution, your goal is the tax rate you pay on the average dollar and the amount of volatility between distribution points. And that's easily proven when you were able to look at some of the modeling that we're able to do. Hey, give Angie a call at 800-928-4001. Get signed up for your Next Steps meeting. We will give you things to consider today, things you're going to want to consider in the future. And if we choose to partner together, what we'll do for you, and we'll put it into writing. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks for the question, guys, and keep them coming. They are, I do my best to answer them. Just keep in mind, you always need to consult your own advisor, or whether that be us or somebody else. It's very hard to get all of the data. No different than a doctor wouldn't want to give you an analysis just off some generalities without seeing the patient, so to speak. You want to be very, very careful with that. Happy to help where we can. What's next?
Attempting to time the market can cost you. It's better to stay the course, and here's why.
Aha. Obviously, you came up with the topic of this title, or this title topic.
Just timing is everything.
Whatever. Go ahead, Levi. Oh, good morning and welcome back to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Angi Kinser.
Happy to have you along. We are on the theme, timing is everything. And go ahead and say make your statement, Angie.
Okay. Attempting to time the market can cost you. It's better to stay the course, and here's why. And it goes on to say market volatility can be scary when you have invested your life savings. Learn why slow and steady always wins the race.
Am I allowed to say part of that question is, or part of that statement is right and part is not?
Of course.
Okay. I think what happens to people is you have one of two parts. You either have people who are in or out. And I won't kid you. We've had two families over the 22 or 3 years that the Financial Enhancement Group's been around. Two of them have passed away. There's one more that can time the market perfectly, because when they're ready to get out, you should be all in, right? And one of them, when he's ready to get all in, the market it's going to take another leg down. They could call it like you wouldn't believe it, purely out of fear, right? So remember, the market is driven upon two emotions, fear and greed, and fear trumps greed every time, right? We believe that slow and steady wins the race, right? We'll buy into that. But that doesn't mean that I stay in this coffee cup when things change, right? We don't jump in and out of the market, but we may jump in and out of positions based on material change that's occurred inside of the economy. So if you pay attention to our market carver, which you can get signed up for on our website, it's free. We send it out every week. Get it at 11:04 Eastern Standard Time in your inbox. When you look at that, we have a process called the risk barometer, and it tells us what the most dominant sectors are based on what's going on. So if you hear the word sector rotation, that's a lot of conversation on that on CNBC. Small caps have rotated positively at the time of the airing of the show. The value stocks have rotated up at the time of the show. Industrials, so it's really odd how that works. It doesn't mean you should stay in necessarily in this stock, especially in your IRA where there's no tax and very little, in our case, zero transaction cost. We can go from this exchange traded fund to this exchange traded fund for no cost at all inside of an IRA. No taxes, no transaction costs because of our contract that we have with our custodian. But to say that I'm going to stay in this stock because it's always going to come back gets us into a problem with a book called The Millionaire Next Door. And one of the arguments in The Millionaire Next Door, and I hate it when people can form stories that sound so real but are really so fictional. Malcolm Gladwell talks about, that there are people who've woke up in bathtubs in a bucket of ice where they've stolen their organs, right? Do you know that's never happened? It never happened. And we just had it in a crime show here 2 weeks ago. The story is so real and so compelling, people believe it.
I think that falls into urban legends.
The Beardstown ladies went on the Today Show and talked about how their returns were, and their logic was they bought stocks in companies where they used around their house. And so they would have their little parties and they would decide whether they wanted this this detergent or this detergent, and they would buy those stocks. Then they published their returns in their Beardstown books. They sold a lot of books, Angie. It's a beautiful thing. Sold a lot of books. The problem is when the audit department got a hold of them and counted it, their returns were about half because they didn't do the math correctly. But understanding the story was so good. Millionaire Next Door went and studied all of these millionaires who had bought stock and held them. They did exactly what that article said. They held the course, right? But there is a statistical problem called survivorship bias. And what it says is you can only study the survivor, right? You can only study the survivor. Bottom line is the people who bought the Baby Bells were millionaires next door, right? The people who bought the railroads weren't there to study. Right? So buying and holding, if you happen to buy the right position, is a beautiful thing. We bought Apple in '06. I've also bought and sold portions of it about 6 or 7 times since 2006. We're long now. I have to say that for the record as of the time of taping of the show. But to say that I'm going to study people who happen to be successful because of one thing they did ignores the consequence or the result of what happened to people who did the same thing and it didn't work out quite so well, right? So yes, we believe you should stay the course. We use a process called the risk barometer to help increase or decrease our exposure based on what we see that's going on. So you should never go from all equities to all cash to all bonds. We think that is crazy. You come up with a model that has some variances in it that you can adjust based on what's going on in the market. We do that with our models. We do that for people. We don't pick up a phone and call and say, what do you think about this particular stock or this particular sector? If it's in my account and we're in the same model, it's going to be in your account. And if I sell it in mine, we're going to sell it in yours. That's what having a fiduciary and a registered investment advisor means.
How big of an impact does it have on your portfolio if you miss good days by trying to avoid bad days?
So again, I have a chartered market technician, Andrew Thrasher, who is on our team, who does a phenomenal job. And Andrew hates those conversations because the charts are so one-sided, and the math is stunning. I mean, it's simply stunning. And what it says is, if you missed like the 5 best days over a 10-year period of time, your return's like a third or 2/3 of what tonight is. You also have to look at the inverse. What happens to your return if you happen to miss the most negative days? Right. So in his model, he goes the other way around because he will raise more cash in his particular model, right for IRAs, right for Roth IRAs. That's where my Roth IRAs are in that model because, again, buying and selling has no tax impact and no transaction impact. Doesn't mean it's necessarily right for you. It's got to be based on your risk tolerance. But different models do different things, and I think that's what people have to understand.
Can there be good days in the market? I mean, can they actually happen during, say, a bear market?
Yeah, some of the best periods of time to invest actually happened to be in 1933. You look at the returns of some of those years in the Great Depression, it's kind of like you've got to be kidding. Some of the best months. I mean, we had the worst drawdown in 2020 in history in March, with the S&P 500 falling the farthest it's ever fallen in that short of time period, right? So we were clearly in what was called a bear market, and then we turned around and the market shot right back up, right? So, you'd have to depend how you depict whether that's a good time or bad time, but days tend to be clustered positively and negatively. And that's another thing that Andrew would tell you. You don't really typically have a one great day and then a one bad day, unless you're in a major challenging period of time like we were in '08, where you had systemic as opposed to systematic market challenges. We're using really big words. I apologize for that. I don't. And those are industry terms, but I will tell you there is a difference between systematic risk, which is what happens inside of the marketplace, that essentially says when you're invested in an equity, a certain percentage, and the old adage is 70%, that's what they teach academically, that 70% of your return is the fact that you were in equities. We don't buy into that, though there's certainly some correlation to that. When you get into
a period of time like '08 and '09 and why we feel it's so different than right now, that was systemic. And what happens at that period of time is it's kind of like cancer. Your hand gets sick and your whole body dies. They're two differing periods of time. You always will deal with systematic risk based on whatever asset class you're in: real estate, gold, Bitcoin, stocks, bonds, cash. Because of inflation, they're all out there.
Forbes had an article, actually it was this year, and it was called 6 Reasons Why Timing the Market is for Suckers. So I got these 6 out and I thought, you could just comment on
Fire
these.
away.
But their 6 were: 1, you don't have an edge against the pros.
That part's generally true. Other than size, if you're in smaller companies, it's possible.
2, you need to be right a lot.
Yes, and you have to be right on both sides. Remember, you have to be right about getting out and right about getting back in, and those are 2 difficult tasks.
You need to be a full-time investor.
We have people who watch the markets pretty much around the day. I guarantee you, Andrew is watching the markets right now. Long after our markets closed. I start way earlier than I probably should. You don't want that. You don't want that for your life. And if you're going to do this correctly, you really do need people who are doing that.
Don't you bet this is aimed towards people who are saying they could do it by themselves?
It's a transference of confidence. Forbes wants you to buy the magazine. If Forbes said, hey, here's the deal, you need to go see Joe Clark at the Financial Enhancement Group, you quit ordering Forbes and just come see us, right? So it is everything that's out there is trying to get you to follow their line of thinking. That's why I try to teach you the logic that we use and the discipline we use on this show to give you the things to consider. If you think that what we're talking about as fiduciaries makes sense, then you ought to call Angi at 800-928-4001. If you want to do it on your own, God bless. We're going to give you things to consider to the best of our ability. And what I used to say is the truth without bias. And then I learned as an academic, we all have bias, and I do. And I try to make that very, very clear in the things we do. I have certain beliefs and certain values that we hold near and dear that we just don't deviate on.
Number 4, market timing is stressful.
Yes.
So
we actually have a broker who sent a multi-7-figure account to us in March because he could no longer handle the stress on his own, and sent that to us. And he's in the industry, and it was all over that. It was all over the stress.
When I get calls in from people on the show, this show that you're listening to now, a lot of times they'll say, in the past, I've managed my own funds and I'm over it. I don't want the stress of it. I want to relax now and enjoy my retirement. I get that all the time.
Most people do not treat their own money as well as we do because they don't have the resources, and you get too emotional and you don't have the discipline. I don't have to explain to Barb why I was right or wrong because we've got $500 million that we manage and take care of. So it's a little bit different. Call Angi at 800-928-4001. We'll take a break and be right back. Hey guys, appreciate you being with us. If you got questions or comments, don't forget to put them on the screen. I think Darren is there, ready to receive them and get them to us. The theme again is timing is everything. Not that I totally buy into that, but it's a catchy title.
It is catchy.
It works.
Now we're going to talk about charitable gifting strategies.
Okay, beautiful.
Okay.
Levi. Well, good morning and welcome back to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Angi Kinser.
Timing is everything.
Yes.
And at the time of the airing of this show, we're nearing the end of the year. When you get into charitable gifting, Angi, almost all of that is based on what you've done prior to December 31st. So you got to get with it.
And there are some strategies that have to do with timing. I know some of the, one of the most confusing strategies is deduction stacking. So I'm going to have you explain what that is. Or bunching. Is that the same thing?
Nope. They're bunching is what the industry uses. I've always called it the double stack.
Oh, okay.
Because I think it makes more sense. So, Andy, I'm going to go ahead and switch to this screen to try to explain it. So, what happens when you look at your tax return? The best way to think about the U.S. tax code is a series of stair steps. So you've got your adjusted gross income, and then it's minused by your standard or itemized deductions, and then you come up with your taxable income. So assuming you're married filing jointly, about the first $19,000 is going to be taxed at 10%. And this is why living in Indiana is so great. Bottom line is, you can live on less money in Indiana than you can in LA. Then you're going to take this next step up. It's currently 12%. And remember, these percentages change, but about $88,000, real close to that, is what's in that next step. So between 19 and 88 is what you're going to pay taxes on. Now, the key thing that Angie's talking about are these standard and itemized deductions. When you look at the standard deduction, there's primarily three major things you can deduct. And that is your state and property tax, what they call the SALT tax that was changed at the end of 2017 and maxed out at $10,000. You've got your mortgage interest, if you happen to have any of that, and you've got your charitable contributions that you're able to make. So when we look at that deduction, the standard deduction went to about $24,400 if you're under age 65. And if you're over 65, you get a bonus $1,300. So it's about $26,600 if you happen to both be over age 65. This money is given to you automatically as a standard deduction. When we look at most people's tax returns, most of the people who come to see us, certainly not all, have their mortgages paid for, aren't making a lot of income anymore. Most of them are preparing for retirement, and they know their income is going to wind down, if they will. And by the way, before you retire, you certainly ought to come see us, because if you're charitably inclined, there's things you need to be considering prior to that, like donor advised funds and essentially deduction stacking, the double stack that we're talking about right now. So let's say you have very limited state tax, and you have and local tax, what we call SALT. You have no mortgage interest, but you give $18,000 a year away. This is a family I was dealing with earlier today. You give away $18,000 a year to charity. In that case, the $18,000 is smaller than the $24,000, right? So they get no benefit for this $18,000 at all, because the $24,000 is free money. What we help people do is to actually go in and make a secondary charitable gift in this year. So they give, in this case, let's say the 2021, we put in another $18,000 into charitable gifting. So you now have $36,000 of itemized deductions. That is more than the $24,000. So you're actually getting some benefit for your charitable gift. And then you turn around the next year and you make no charitable gifts. You just take the standard deduction and get the free $24,000. That's what that double stack comes into play. With COVID and some of the issues that came out of 2020, there are some extreme opportunities here that don't normally exist for people. And again, when you're over 70 and a half and you've got required minimum distributions at age 72 that are coming, you can still do qualified charitable distributions, or QCDs, prior to the end of the year. But we're running out of time. You need to really get on that. But that's what the double stack is, and that's how it works.
Okay. So
and every now and then you'll read about somebody who calls it bunching. I'm not the only one who does that. Just we've been doing it for a long time.
Gotcha. So that's not something you can go back and recapture. I mean, that's
No,
something you
when the clock strikes midnight on December 31st, you are done. There's nothing you can do. There's very little you can do to impact your tax return other than a few IRA contributions, Roth contributions, some SEP issues if you're a self-employed individual. Most of what you're looking to do, you want to accomplish by mid-December to be able to get done and make sure that it's going to be applied for this year.
Did the CARES Act modify deduction limits?
It did in this year. So what happened in the Secure Act is it changed the amount of your adjusted gross income that you could give away out of your AGI in cash up to 60%. That was at the end of 19. Then the COVID hit, March 27th, the CARES Act was passed. This year, you can actually give away 100% of your AGI if you wanted to in cash. But when you look at appreciated assets, property, and stock, you're limited to that 30%. But yes, there were there were very significant changes that were made in both the Secure Act at the end of 19 and the CARES Act that was added this year.
Can you deduct gifts that are by credit card?
Yeah, absolutely. If it's going to the IRS doesn't care where the gift is going, how it's getting there. In fact, it's Gifting Tuesday. We do this show on Tuesdays, and it was Cyber Tuesday. And we made a gift online
Cyber
because
Monday.
Facebook is doing something with a matching thing. And so Barb and I made a gift this morning, which I've never done online before. It was very difficult, frankly. I had to make her do it. Thank you, honey. But they don't care the source of the gift. They care that it went the recipient of the gift. So people will ask us every year, every month, if can I deduct money I give to my kids? No, not unless they're 501c3 entities. And most kids are not. They're your kids. Now, again, in a case that I was dealing with earlier today, there was a family that has a son that's going to plant a church and is supposed to raise part of their own capital. And in that case, they were able to make a gift, actually using the double stack. They were able to make a gift to the church in the general fund to be able to help their son. But that's not helping the son directly. That's going to the general fund of the church and money that he was encouraged to raise to support his part of the contribution.
We help a lot of times with gifting, like of stock, appreciated stock, things like that. But this question is, if you gift a security, what if you gift a security and the value goes down before the charity receives it?
Well, so that, I mean, in
Can you
theory,
only deduct
in
that amount?
theory, it could happen. The gift that when it leaves the building is the amount of money that you can deduct, because you made that gift. Now, what happens, and we got probably 10% of the charities that we take care of that want to maintain the stock. So we'll have people transfer highly appreciated stock. You get a gift. Remember, you said deduct. You can only deduct if you itemize, Ange. Let's not forget that. But we gift a highly appreciated stock. And even if you can't itemize, by the way, still gifting highly appreciated stock is still a great strategy. I've had people tell individuals that it doesn't make any sense to do a stock if you don't get the deduction. I have no idea where that logic comes from. It is wrong. You can't gift out of an IRA unless you're over 70 and a half. But other than that, you still want to use highly appreciated stock even if you cannot itemize. But nonetheless, you make the gift. The gift, some charities will actually keep the stock. Most of them, and we help charities set these up all the time, and we do it at our cost. When the stock arrives, it's sold instantaneously. So it's almost a boom, boom, right? So it'd be very, very difficult for that to have happen.
So they can hold that stock and maybe hope for appreciation.
Like I said, about 10% of the charities do that. They have endowment funds where they have assets that are there. I'm on a board for the Indiana National Resources Foundation, and they, we have money in investment accounts where people donate stock and we retain the stock.
What if your 501c3 doesn't have an account set up? How do they do that?
We actually open up the account for them. So part of our planning team, my associate advisors, part of what they do is we'll reach out to the charity, the 501c3 entity, to make sure that they are able to receive the stock. Now, remember, if you're doing a QCD, a qualified charitable distribution, that's not going in stock form. That's going in cash form. So it's immaterial. But if you're under 70 and a half, or you don't have an IRA and you're gifting that appreciated stock, they do need to have an account to receive it. And we go through that process. Every now and then it is burdensome. Where you've got to convince people on a board that we're actually trying to do a good thing. And some people just don't get it. They're scared. They've never had money in stocks. They don't understand what's happening. But this is a very simple process. We do it all the time. And we probably set up 20 to 30 accounts a year for charitable entities where people want to gift money or gift appreciated assets.
How can you time your charitable gifts in a volatile market?
So when you're giving away assets, you want to give them when the market is up, not when the market is down. So you wouldn't have wanted to give away you wouldn't want to give away assets in March per se, when the S&P 500 had fallen 35% in a very short period of time. However, that's the ideal time to do a Roth conversion, right? If you believe the market will rebound, you want to convert where you pay less taxes, right, on money that you think is going to grow back up. The inverse of what you would do with a charity. Again, going back to a previous segment, timing is tough, right? It's really tough to get there. You've got to make some wagers. I funded my 401k in March, when the market was down, because I believed that was the right thing to do. Right now, I look smart. Part of the year I didn't look so bright, right? So it's, timing is just a tough period of time. I'm not using the money today. I thought the market would go up from where it was, so I put the money in.
This year, even though you don't have to take your RMDs, it's still a good idea to do the QCD.
It's still a great idea to do the QCD if you're doing charitable contributions. But again, it's not as easy as saying that. I really would like to be able to look at your tax return and what it looks like this year, what it's going to look like next year, to be able to find those tax opportunities, to make sure that you can do proper and appropriate planning, to take the biggest advantage of what you can. In crisis, there is opportunity. And there is a lot of crisis this year, and there is a lot of opportunity in terms of tax code changes that are going to revert back, in terms of income variability, all sorts of interesting opportunities that are out there. Some don't feel so good, but let's make some lemonade out of lemons if we can. Hey, don't forget to call Angi at 800-928-4001. Get signed up for your Next Steps meeting. My team is looking forward to meeting you. They are ready to roll. We'll be right back. All right.
Okay.
Good. So we're going to get ready to go to the outro. If you've got questions, you can still send them in.
Yeah, if you have questions, we were going to mention Gifting Tuesday in the outro, but let's talk about Thanksgiving a little bit.
Oh, boy.
Weird it was.
Here we go. Go ahead, Levi. Timing is everything, and COVID in the middle of my Thanksgiving was not
good.
I might have had a bad attitude, but I tried not to. We always have a big party at our house the day after Thanksgiving, and lots of people and lots of food, and having nobody there kind of made Joe a sourpuss just a wee bit. But
You were a little grumpy, weren't you?
I was a little grumpy. That's probably a fair thing. I don't like not being in control, and control is really an illusion that we all have. We think we're in control. We're really in far less control of more things than we know. But I always count on that party, and the blessing was all the people who reached out to say, I can't believe I'm not there this year.
Yeah.
And so anyhow.
Yeah, it was kind of strange, but I'm going to be curious to see the numbers because, Cyber Monday is what comes after Thanksgiving, and where people are ordering Christmas online. And then today's Gifting Tuesday, we mentioned that. But I'm going to be anxious to see what the numbers were with Cyber Monday, because people aren't wanting to go out and shop either.
Yeah, they're going to be. I think they've already said that they are the largest in history.
Oh.
But what happened is companies actually started Cyber Monday on like Wednesday of last week because they knew they weren't going to have the Black Friday sales, and so they tried to juice them on to their online sites. And the companies that have the capacity to be able to do that, the Walmarts, the Amazons, the Targets. I think they're going to see phenomenal responses. We'll know that in the retail sales, but in the month of November, when you look at the S&P 500, one of the sectors is the retail sector. It was up 20% for the month of November of 2020.
Wow.
And market volatility is just huge. Now you hear that 20% and go, oh my, that's a lot. Well, yeah, it is a lot. Which you still have to remember. One of the companies that I'll leave alone right now, but one of the companies had a big news today and was up, 10 to 15%, and it's still down 29% year to date. So what happens over a short-term period of time is not something that you can look at. We have people who call and ask about energy stocks and those kind of things and where we are. You can't really look at a short-term period of time to make decisions on your investment. As Angie said earlier in the show, timing is everything. That doesn't mean that you can time everything. It needs to mean you have a strategy. You want to follow that through. Give Angie a call at 800-928-4001 or go to our website at yourlifeafterwork.com. Get signed up for a Next Steps meeting. It's complimentary. One of my team will sit down with you and they'll spend 90 minutes with you to give you things that you need to consider right now, things you're going to want to consider in the future, and if we choose to partner together, what FEG will do for you, and we'll put it into writing. My friends, have a great week. Do not miss the tax opportunities. Get with it. Take care. Hey, folks, we appreciate you guys being with us as well. If you've got questions or comments, it is not too late just for tonight. Like I said, give Angie a call at 800-928-4001. Put the questions up. We will get to them next week. Angie, as always, it was a joy.
I agree.
There we go. We'll have fun. Hey, take care, my friends. Be safe.